One plain word, water, turns a tiny atoll into bait. If HYPO guesses wrong, 3 American carriers will park themselves in a kill zone. If HYPO is right, 4 Japanese carriers will sail blind into an ambush they can't see. Early June. Days left? 5. Pearl Harbor, Station HYPO. A hot room where receivers hiss, typewriters clack, and a tired fan lies about comfort. On the chalkboard, 5-digit groups from JN25 run in rows, some crossed out, some circled, arrows between them like veins. Joseph Rochefort works in a bathrobe thrown over his uniform, because the room is always either too cold or too late. Around him, Thomas Dyer, Wesley Wright, and intelligence officer Edwin Layton, carrying estimates upstairs to Admiral Nimitz. Their tools are math and nerve, partial code books and additives, guest cribs for weather and logistics, traffic patterns of who talks to whom and for how long, direction-finding bearings that pin loud voices on the map. Washington stays cautious. AF might be Johnston, Oahu, or Bait. Rochefort doesn't argue. He proves. Midway transmits a plain text complaint. Our desalination plant is down, water short. Hours later, Tokyo's encrypted net obligingly echoes the problem. AF is short of water. A guess becomes a place. A place becomes a plan. Now the questions sharpen from where to when and with what. Fueling rhythms and submarine screen traffic point to the North Central Pacific. Message volume to the carrier division spikes, then goes dark. Silence that sounds like movement. HYPO pencils a window. Approach at the end of May. Strikes in early June, narrowing to June 4th, 1942. Nimitz chooses ambush, not muscle. Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown will wait northeast of Midway. Radios dark, decks ready. The price is silence. The American carriers will become holes in the radio sky. Arguments turn to mechanics. What will the Japanese arm first? Bombs for Midway's airfields, or torpedoes for ships? Rochefort bets bombs. If the first wave returns and the decks are rearming when American dive bombers arrive, the battle flips in a minute. A rearm cycle means half an hour to 3/4 of an hour of maximum exposure. Open fuel lines, loose bombs, crews moving under pressure. Midway prepares to matter. PBYs practice long sweeps to the northwest. The approach lane HYPO insists on. Marines shovel revetments. Ground crews scatter aircraft into sandbagged pockets and smear camouflage over anything that shines. The island is bait, but also a weapon. Every minute spent bombing sand is a minute the enemy's decks aren't ready for a carrier fight. In HYPO's basement, a young radio man copies an innocuous logistics list that quietly confirms air group positions. Rochefort taps the board with chalk and sums up the plan in one line. Right minute, wrong weapons. That's where we win. Yorktown, patched in a miracle week after Coral Sea, limps fast to the rendezvous on glue, new paint, and stubbornness. Enterprise aviators check dive brake pins. Hornet's crews promise no wild searches off bearing if HYPO's plot holds. Washington still wants caveats. HYPO sends facts. AF equals Midway. Date June 4th. 4 fleet carriers inferred from logistics and traffic. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryū. Enough truth to risk a fleet, and enough confidence to set the trap. Night peels away in thin layers. Coffee is rationed by usefulness. A yeoman boxes 0604 on a wall calendar and marvels at how small a date looks when it might break a navy. On the last briefing before the ocean takes over, Layton points to an empty square of sea northeast of Midway and says, "Here." Nimitz nods once. "We'll be there first." The clock HYPO built from cribs, bearings, and bait is now running on steel. Out past the reef, 3 American carriers slide into position and hide in plain silence. The next chapter won't be written in chalk, It will be written in arcs of contrails, black puffs of flak, and a deck caught at the wrong minute. Pearl Harbor, basement level, station HYPO. Receivers hiss, typewriters clack, a tired fan thumps the ceiling. On the chalkboard, 5-digit groups from JN25, some crossed out, some circled, arrows running between them like veins. Joseph Rochefort wears a bathrobe over his uniform because the room is either too cold or too late. Around him, Thomas Dyer, Wesley Wright, an intelligence officer, Edwin Layton, carrying estimates to Admiral Nimitz. Their tools are math and nerve, partial codebook and additives, guest cribs for weather and logistics, traffic analysis of who talks to whom and for how long, and direction-finding bearings that pin loud voices on the map. Washington stays cautious. AF could be Johnston, Oahu, or Bate. Rochefort doesn't argue. He proves. Midway transmits a plain text complaint. Our desalination is down, water short. Hours later, Tokyo's encrypted net obligingly echoes, AF is short of water. A guess becomes a place becomes a plan. Now the questions sharpen from where to when and with what. Fueling rhythms and submarine screens point to the North Central Pacific. Message volume to Cardiv 1 and Cardiv 2 spikes, then goes dark. Silence that sounds like movement. HYPO pencils a window. Approach end of May. Strikes early June, narrowing to June 4th, 1942. Layton paces the ops room with a grease pencil. Enemy flight radii. Dawn light. The lane where returning strike groups will leave decks temporarily vulnerable. Nimitz chooses ambush. Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown will wait northeast of Midway. Radios dark, decks ready. The price is silence. The American carriers become holes in the radio sky. Arguments turn to mechanics. What will the Japanese arm first? Bombs for Midway's airfields or torpedoes for ships? Rochefort bets bombs. If the first wave returns and the decks are rearming when American dive bombers arrive, the battle flips in a minute. A rearm cycle means 30 to 45 minutes of maximum exposure. Open fuel lines, loose bombs, crews moving under pressure. Midway prepares to matter. PBYs practice long sweeps to the northwest. The approach lane HYPO insists on. Marines shovel revetments. Ground crews scatter aircraft into sandbagged pockets. The island is bait, but also a weapon. Every minute spent bombing sand is a minute the enemy's decks aren't ready for a carrier fight. In HYPO's basement, a young radio man copies an innocuous logistics list that quietly confirms air group positions. Rochefort taps the board with chalk. Right minute, wrong weapons. There's where we win. Yorktown, patched in a miracle week after Coral Sea, limps fast to the rendezvous. Glue, new paint, and stubbornness. Enterprise aviators check dive brake pins. Hornet's crews promise no wild searches off bearing if HYPO's plot holds. Washington still wants caveats. HYPO sends facts. AF equals Midway. Date June 4th. 4 fleet carriers inferred from logistics and traffic. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryū. Enough truth to risk a fleet and enough confidence to set the trap. Night peels away in thin layers. Coffee is rationed by usefulness. A yeoman boxes 0604 on a wall calendar and marvels at how small a date looks when it might break a navy. On the last briefing before the ocean takes over, Layton points to an empty square of sea northeast of Midway. Here. Nimitz nods once. We'll be there first. The clock HYPO, built from cribs, bearings, and bait, is now running on steel. Out past the reef, 3 American carriers slide into position and hide in plain silence. The next chapter won't be written in chalk. It will be written in arcs of contrails, black puffs of flak, and a deck caught at the wrong minute. The trap isn't a line on a map. It's a moving square of ocean, empty to anyone who isn't looking for what's not there. Sail to Point Luck, the ambush box that isn't on any chart. Admiral Chester Nimitz hands the striking arm to two men. Task Force 16, Enterprise and Hornet, to Raymond Spruance, a calm destroyer man with a surgeon's hands. Task Force 17, Yorktown, to Jack Fletcher, bringing a damaged ship and an instinct for when not to blink. The plan is simple and murderous. Wait. 200 nautical miles northeast of Midway. Let the enemy walk past, then hit when his decks are busy with someone else's problem. Silence buys surprise. The carriers go radio dark. Bearings are kept by dead reckoning and stars. Time by launch cycles and coffee. From Midway, PBYs fan out on the northwest arc. HYPO swears by. If a flying boat puts eyes on the enemy first, the box will be in the right place when the ocean tilts from quiet to war. On Yorktown, the smell of coral sea still clings to the welds. In 3 days, a miracle patch job drags her back to fighting shape. Plates, paint, stubbornness. Crews rehearse the one dance that matters. Launch fast, recover faster, turn the deck again. Spruance keeps his decks trim and patient. No fuel burned on phantoms. No showy sweeps to leak position. Fighters fly tight cap. Scouts go out like clock hands and return on the minute. Cap turns over every 45-60 minutes. Fuel decides who lives overhead. The Japanese plan is beautiful. On paper. Nagumo will smash Midway's airfields at dawn, finish them if needed, then pivot to sink whatever American carriers rush to help. He brings 4 names: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryū, and the confidence that past victories buy. What his plan can't see is an empty square where 3 American carriers already are. Night slides over both fleets. On Midway, Marines keep digging. Searchlights test their throats, and a PBY lifts into the dark to fly the long arc it has flown all week. The math of carriers is cruel and tidy. A strike must launch, form, navigate, attack, then find home. While it's gone, the carrier guards itself with a thin umbrella of fighters and weights. The moment of greatest danger is also the moment of greatest vulnerability. When a returning strike is overhead and the deck is full of fuel lines, open bomb carts, and moving hands. Spruance and Fletcher aim for that minute. By late June 3rd, Midway's patrols report smoke and ships, the invasion group, far to the west-southwest. Proof the board is set the way HYPO drew it. The carriers, the only pieces that matter, are still rumor in the dark. Spruance holds his box. Fletcher shadows close enough to strike, far enough not to collide when both task forces swing. Somewhere on Enterprise, Wade McClusky tightens a glove. Somewhere on Akagi, Taman Yamaguchi studies the wind. On Hornet, an ordnanceman threads a fuse with hands that don't shake. On Yorktown, the LSO memorizes the sea's rhythm for a morning that will come too fast. Weather helps and threatens. Soft silhouettes, unhelpful horizons, squalls that can hide a carrier or reveal one. The box breathes with the barometer, small hourly corrections to stay where the enemy thinks is empty. In the small hours before dawn, final checks run without voices. Fuel topped. Arming orders at standby. Scouts briefed to report once and clean. Bearing, distance, course, speed, then clear the frequency. Pilots whisper old promises. Navigators fold the same map one more time for luck. June 4th. The sky pales. First contact expected around 0430, 0530 local. Midway's patrols lift. Somewhere beyond that line, Nagumo has already turned into the wind. His decks are about to bloom. So are ours. The ambush has shape. It has time. All it needs now is sight. One human eye finding one gray triangle in too much ocean, and saying the only words that matter. Enemy carriers. Bearing. Distance. Course. Speed. Dawn. June 4th. The ocean is the color of a closed fist. 0430 0445. Nagumo turns into the wind and launches his first strike. 108 aircraft armed with bombs for Midway's airfields. A second wave, his reserve, waits on the carriers, initially held for ship attack with torpedoes. 0530. Midway's PBY reports. Many enemy ships, carriers present. The island is awake. Marines man guns. B-26s and TBFs will try something no one recommends. Torpedo runs against the Kido Butai with almost no fighter cover. 06. Sank. The Japanese first wave hits Midway. Sand jumps. Fuel tanks burn. Runways scar. But the island is not silent. Marine F-2A and F-4F fighters rise and die hard. SBDs and SB-2Us claw for altitude and dive back through flak. It is not elegant. It is resistance. And more importantly, time burned off Nagumo's clock. 0620s, 0630. B-26s and TBFs find the carriers and drop to wave-top height. Flak fences the sea. Zeros rake the torpedo lines. A B-26 plows through Akagi's flak and almost skids onto her deck, meters from killing a flagship with its own wreckage. The torpedoes miss. The message does not. American carriers are near. 07-7-15. Out on the horizon, the U.S. ambush moves. Enterprise and Hornet begin launching their strike groups. Yorktown will follow. The American decks empty by sections. Torpedo squadrons first, dive bombers climbing behind, fighters thin as a prayer. Bearings are imperfect. Weather is unhelpful. They go anyway. 07-15-07-30. Nagumo receives a preliminary damage report from Midway. The airfield is not neutralized. Doctrine says, finish the base. He orders the reserve, armed with torpedoes, to be rearmed with bombs for a second strike on Midway. Below decks, crews start the most dangerous choreography in naval war. Swap warloads. Fuel lines open. Bomb carts roll. Time begins to pool on the hangar deck. 07-28-07-40. The late scout from Tone, number 4, finally reports enemy ships. At first, cruisers and destroyers. Minutes later, carrier present. The news collides with Nagumo's order in midair. He reverses himself. Switch back to torpedoes. Prepare to fight ships, not sand. The rearm cycle turns on its heel. The decks become a half-changed mind. Bombs going one way, torpedoes the other, hoses everywhere, crews sweating minutes. 08. 8:20. American torpedo squadrons fly toward a rumor that keeps correcting itself. VT-8 from Hornet never finds the dive bombers they were supposed to meet. They turn alone toward the smoke that looks like answers. 09:20. VT-8 arrives first. 15 TBD devastators, low and straight into a swarm of zeros. No top cover, no luck. One by one, they burn and skip and slide under. 14 do not come back. Ensign George Gay lives, floating in a seat cushion, watching a battle he can no longer touch. 10:10. VT-6 from Enterprise makes its run. Losses again. Torpedoes walk into wakes and miss. Fighters carve the formation apart. The price is terrible and very fast. 10:20, 10:30. VT-3 from Yorktown presses in from another angle. Again the same story. Brave, low, doomed. But something is changing that no one can plot on a board. The Japanese cap, those perfect zeros, are dragged down to sea level, scattered, low on ammo and fuel, chasing torpedo planes that refuse to stop attacking. Above them, high and unseen, American SBD dive bombers hunt in widening circles for a fleet that keeps slipping under weather and error. One leader, Wade McClusky, will soon make a tiny decision: follow a solitary destroyer's wake that becomes a straight line to history. On the Japanese decks, the rearm clock is still running. Bombs and torpedoes have traded places twice. Fuel lines are open. Spotting crews are reparking aircraft. The carriers are powerful, ready to kill, and briefly, perfectly vulnerable. The wrong weapons are on the hooks. The right minute is about to arrive. 0:20:10:25, June 4th. High, thin, and almost out of fuel, the SBD dive bombers finally see a clue. A lone destroyer, Arashi, running hard. Wade McClusky reads the wake like an arrow and turns his Enterprise group to follow it. At 19,000 feet, the clouds thin and the Kido Butai appears, 4 gray rectangles breathing smoke and speed. The Japanese cap is low and scattered, dragged down by the torpedo attacks. Above them, the sky is suddenly American. 10:22. McClusky splits his force. VS-6 rolls for Kaga. VB-6 shifts toward Akagi. In the confusion of altitude and angle, both elements initially fall on Kaga, a fortress of a target now centered in a widening crosshair. Canopies slide back. Dive brakes snap. The world tilts. 10:24. Bombs fall in a measured rain. Kaga's deck is crowded. Fuel hoses, bomb carts, aircraft being respotted. The first 500-pounders punch through planks and steel. The next walk the length of the ship. Flames take the wind. In seconds, Kaga is a moving chimney. Fire chasing fuel. Fuel chasing men. Her sirens howl under the roar. A handful of VB-6 planes, seeing the crush, sheer off toward the flagship Akagi. Lieutenant Commander Dick Best picks the thinner, deadlier target. A single bomb placed exactly can do what a dozen might miss. He pins Akagi's flight deck just abaft the midships, near fueled, armed aircraft and open lines. The hit is surgical. The result is not. Fire blossoms. Heat finds gasoline. The flagship's brain catches fire with her body. On the horizon, Yorktown's VB-3 under Max Leslie arrives from a different sky and dives on Hiryū. 3, 4, then more clean strikes walk her deck. Hangars erupt. Hiryū sags into her own smoke, mortally hurt. 10:25, 10:30. 3 carriers, Kaga, Akagi, Hiryū, are burning inside 5 minutes. The geometry that HYPO bet on has become physics. Wrong weapons on the hooks. Open fuel lines on the decks. And American dive bombers at the right minute. Only Hiryū lives clean. Her decks are clear. Her captain, Taman Yamaguchi, unshaken. He will answer in kind. The American groups turn for home on fumes and luck. Some SBDs form up by 2s and 3s. Some glide alone, engines coughing. Below them, the Pacific writes 3 long black columns on the horizon where carriers used to be. This is the hinge of the day. The ambush worked, not by chance, but by timer, position, and men who dived when the sky finally gave them a line. Next, Hiryū's counterpunch, and the price Yorktown pays for buying victory. 10:30:11 June 4th. Smoke marks 3 dying giants, Kaga, Akagi, Hiryū. Only Hiryū runs clean. Her flight deck is clear, her air group still sharp. Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi does not hesitate. 11:11:10. Hiryū turns into the wind and launches her first counterstrike, D-3A, Val, dive bombers with 0 escort. They home on the only American carrier they can find, Yorktown. 12:20. Sirens on Yorktown. Dive bombers come out of the sun in steep, fast angles. 2 clean hits smash the flight deck and uptakes. A near miss stuns the boilers. Fires take hold, but the crew fights like a machine. Hoses, foam, discipline. Steam pressure returns. Within an hour, Yorktown can make way, and even recover aircraft. She refuses to leave the line. 13:30:14. Hiryū launches again. This time, B-5N Kate torpedo bombers, low and mean, led in by grit and good navigation. 14:30:14:45. They come in from both beams to split the ship's defenses. 2 torpedoes bite Yorktown's port side in quick sequence. Metal shutters. Compartments flood. The carrier takes a savage list. Power fails. With damage control losing the race against time, Captain Buckmaster gives the order no sailor wants. Abandon ship. Boats and rafts claw away from a hull that still looks alive. The price of the morning's victory has arrived, but the sky hasn't finished. 15:30, 16:30. American scouts pick up Hiryū. Coordinates pass fast and clean. Enterprise forms a strike. Yorktown's surviving SBDs fold in under Max Leslie, now flying from a different deck because their own is dying. 17:05. The dive begins. Hiryū is turning into the wind to recover fighters. Exactly the wrong minute. Bombs step down her deck and into her hangars. Fire blossoms through fueled aircraft and open lines. In minutes, Hiryū is a furnace racing itself. Night will take her. Yamaguchi will choose to go down with the ship. June 5-6. The battle's echo is cruel. Yorktown still floats, dead but stubborn, under tow. A Japanese submarine, I-168, slips through the screen and fires. The destroyer Hammond breaks in two. Yorktown takes new wounds. She rolls and slides under on June 7th. The ocean writes a final, quiet line over her. 4 Japanese fleet carriers are gone. 1 American carrier is lost, purchasing that fact. The center of gravity in the Pacific has moved. By nightfall, the Pacific has a different center of gravity. 4 Japanese fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryū, are burning or gone. Their flight decks vanish with something harder to replace. Their air groups, pilots, crews, armorers, directors, petty officers who make a deck breathe on time. Steel can be laid. Experience cannot be rushed. Japan still has battleships, cruisers, and courage. But the instrument that made Pearl Harbor possible, the carrier striking arm with elite crews, has been cut in half. Future operations will have ships. They will not have the same hands. For the United States, Midway is not a parade. It is a reprieve and a proof. A reprieve because 3 carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, Yorktown, stood between the war and a worse year. A proof because an idea won. Use intelligence and position to force the enemy into the wrong minute, then hit with the right weapon. The practical changes begin immediately. Cryptanalysis validated. HYPO's pencil and nerve work moves from risky hunch to operational tool. Commanders will ask, what does HYPO see, before they sail. Deck doctrine sharpened. Strike, recover, and rearm become a choreography timed to the minute, with officers treating rearm windows like hazards, not idle pauses. Cap discipline. Fighters are held in layers. High to catch dive bombers, low for torpedo planes, so one threat can't pull the whole umbrella down. Radar and reporting. Contacts will be called once and clean. Bearing, distance, course, speed, and then the frequency goes cold. Clarity saves minutes. Minutes save carriers. Torpedo truth. The cost paid by VT squadrons forces a hard look at weapons and approach tactics. Courage stays. Procedures change. On the Japanese side, decisions narrow. Yamamoto's grand design. Smash Midway. Destroy the American carriers. Then force a negotiated peace. Breaks on the rocks of 4 burning flight decks. Replacement carriers will be built. Replacement crews will not arrive with the same seasoning. The conveyor belt from training to combat cannot bake skill on a timetable. Maps shift. With the Kido Butai blunted, the initiative tilts. The United States can choose where to bleed the enemy and when to feed the fight. In August, that choice will have a name: Guadalcanal. The psychological change is larger than headlines. For months, Japanese planning had assumed tempo. They strike, we react. They choose, we answer. After Midway, American commanders learn a new habit. Set the board, not just play it. Hide in an empty square of sea. Let intelligence pick the hour. Make the enemy's strength, speed, and coordination fight against his own timetable. There is a human ledger, and it is not tidy. Yorktown will go under in the days ahead, wounded beyond saving by a submarine's late thrust. On the other side, Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, who argued for pressing the fight, goes down with Hiryū. Names on both lists don't come home. Midway didn't end grief. It redirected it. What changes in the mind might matter most. American aircrews leave Midway knowing that discipline beats panic, that a single decision to follow a destroyer's wake, to hold a bomb load 1 minute longer, to trust an estimate on a board, can turn an ocean. Japanese planners leave Midway carrying a new weight. The enemy will now read and reach. From this day, Japan will defend longer lines with thinner hands. The United States will attack with a carrier force that grows month by month, backed by yards that do not sleep. The outcome is not instant. It is inevitable the way tide is inevitable. Slow, heavy, directional. Midway does not crown a victor. It chooses who gets to write the next chapter. Myth. Midway was a miracle of luck. Fact. Luck showed up, but it found men who had prepared the minute. HYPO broke enough of JN-25 to nail AF Midway, the date, and a likely 4-carrier force. Nimitz placed 3 carriers northeast of Midway before the enemy arrived. That's not luck. That's position, bought with intelligence. Myth. A late scout message decided everything. Fact. The Tone 4 delay mattered, but it only hurt because Nagumo had already launched with bombs for Midway, then reversed to torpedoes after learning U.S. ships were present. The crucial vulnerability was the rearm window on Japanese decks. Fuel lines open, bombs moving, aircraft being respotted. A late report didn't create that. Doctrine did. Myth. American pilots just happened to find the carriers. Fact. McClusky followed a destroyer's wake because he knew a lone destroyer at full speed was rejoining its task force. That's applied judgment, not a coin toss. Max Leslie's group arrived from a different sky because the ambush box was placed to enable multiple approaches. Convergence came from the plan. Myth. The torpedo squadrons died for nothing. Fact. Their attacks dragged the Japanese cap down to sea level, burned ammo and fuel, and kept fighters out of the high guard exactly when SBDs arrived. The cost was terrible. The effect was decisive. Myth. Japan simply had bad luck. Fact. Japan brought avoidable structural weaknesses, fragmented scouting, a rigid strike doctrine that assumed initiative, deck practices that stacked fueled armed aircraft, and an expectation that Americans would react slowly. Against an enemy using intelligence timing, those habits turned into targets. Myth. Yorktown was doomed anyway. Her loss doesn't change the ledger. Fact. Yorktown absorbed 2 full counterstrikes, kept fighting long enough to help kill Hiryū, and then became a magnet for a submarine attack that didn't hit another carrier. She bought time and position with her life. The ledger changed because 4 enemy fleet carriers sank, and their air group's irreplaceable experience went with them. Myth. Midway proves technology wins by itself. Fact. Technology mattered less than process. Clear contact reports, bearing, distance, course, speed, cap discipline in layers, tight deck cycles, and commanders willing to hold fire until the right minute. Where technology failed, torpedoes that ran poorly, tactics and timing carried the day. What actually won? Signals, plus analysis. HYPO's work turned guess into clock, clock into position. Operational nerve. Nimitz risked 3 carriers on the estimate and kept them radio dark. Deck discipline. Spruance and Fletcher launched in phases that could still converge. Human judgment. McClusky's wake decision. Dick Best's choice of Akagi. Crews who dove when fuel said turn home. Enemy doctrine exposed. A rearm-heavy bomb cart deck caught at the wrong minute. Midway wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate collision. Our intelligence and restraint against their assumptions and schedule. When luck appeared, it found a board already set, a clock already running, and pilots who knew what to do when the sky finally gave them a line. End.